Let's hope you don't mind. Many of you know that I grew up in the funeral business, and so I know a good funeral director when I see one. And this is one of the best. And we are so lucky to have such good neighbors next door and working well together. And I can't tell you the number of times Almon Funeral Home has just been supportive or have been gracious to us, not just in terms of the work we both do together, but just in general. So I'm really delighted to have Keith here to share with y'all, and be sure to load him with questions because he's got the answers. All right, so go ahead.
Thank you, Pastor Jeff, and thank you for allowing for this opportunity for me to be here. And it's good to see some of y'all that are very familiar faces to me over the years, and see you on a different occasion versus at a death at the funeral home and all of that. But I will get started. Got a short little slideshow presentation just to talk a little bit about planning your funeral in advance, and then we'll have a time of question and if you have questions to go over. Just real briefly, today's goals, answer some of your questions of funeral service, the role of funeral director, why plan in advance, tips on pre-planning, information on prepaying, and then some questions that I have that you should ask or be aware of if you don't already have those on that. Basically, the role of funeral director is to help people in their greatest time of need. Just a little background. In high school, I had no idea I'd end up where I'm at today. First was started out, my major set goal was to be a lawyer. And so that's what I was gearing towards. And then senior year in high school, and I was raised in church, I felt the call to the ministry. So I changed from lawyer to ministry. I guess that's broad spectrum there, isn't it? So from the high school, I went to seminary, enrolled in seminary, and was going through seminary, and came back home and was finishing up seminary and started working part-time at Almon in 1999. And here I am still there today. It turned into a full-time position, which looking back, it was God's great plan on it. And it is a ministry. I don't see it as a job. It's my ministry, and that's where he's placed me at. And to help families during their greatest time of need. And it is an honor when a family calls upon us to help, because it is our ministry, and that's what we're there for, is that time of service. So we're there to be your listener, advisors. You can imagine some of the things that we get involved in with different families, because not all families are good functional families, and we do get into some sticky situations there. So we are advisors and have to weigh both sides of that. But we help you with beginning that healing process. We offer different sorts of grief and bereavement resources, and then we handle the paperwork for you, from the legal paperwork. We coordinate with doctors, getting death certificates signed, getting the copies from the state. We arrange with ministers and work that out with family in details, arrange meetings with them, the florist, the music, and just the whole components of the funeral. And it does take our team, along with the staff of the church, whichever church it is, to all get in there and get together, and we all get on the same page. So it's a service that is fitting in what the family has asked. A little testimony here from someone says, my husband and I felt a little uncomfortable discussing our funerals, especially since we had so much life left in front of us. But afterward, it seemed like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders. It was one less thing we and our children would have to worry about. Pre-planning, I encourage it very much, simply because of that testimony there, people there. When it's a sudden death and the family's stricken with that grief, it's hard for them to think and to come up with, well, what would they want? And when it's pre-planned, as we'll discuss and see, it offers a degree of emotional and sometimes financial security if it's prepaid in advance. It relieves your family of having to make important decisions during that period of grief and stress, and gives you a peace of mind and your family a peace of mind, knowing that your service was conducted according to your wishes. You have in your mind probably what you would like for your service. Some of you here probably maybe not even thought about it, but you got an idea of what you would like, but if you don't express that or plan it out or write it out, then no one, your family may not know. You may want traditional burial. Your family may say we're going to have cremation, or vice versa. But if you sit down and put these wishes in mind and types of services, then you can have the comfort of knowing that it's done accordingly. Thinking ahead means different things for different people. Pre-planning may be done on different levels. Do what is comfortable for you and your family. Educate yourself. Explore all funeral options. Be an informed consumer and consider what is best for you and your family. Write your wishes down somewhere. Keep them in a safe place. Discuss your wishes with your family and a close friend. I've got it later in there too when it says keep in a safe place. That's not a safety deposit box. Okay, a lot of families put things in there, but if the death occurs on a weekend, guess what? Can't get to that safety deposit box. And then if your loved one isn't on your account to have access to the safety deposit box, they can't get in it without going through probate court. So necessarily put in a safe place at the home in a drawer somewhere that they would know, or provide a copy for them so they will know where it is at. Be flexible. Life is full of change. Your loved ones may want to make some adjustments later to make the service more meaningful, and consider the emotions of your family. We say funerals or memorial services are not necessarily for the deceased, but it's for the living. And that's the reason you take in mind your family's emotions during this time as well, to take in consideration that they're the ones that are remaining. They're the ones that need that comfort and help to start their grief journey and to go through. So keep their emotions in mind. Thinking ahead, the most important thing to remember in the process is that you should do what is right for you and your family. Take all the time you need to make sure your plan fully represents how you want your life celebrated. Do I have to prepay? You don't have to prepay to pre-plan. However, if you choose to, you can discuss the different options with the funeral director and ask all the questions concerning it on that. And I'll just hit some highlights with it. We may go into further discussions later with it, but you can come in and pre-plan. You can sit down with a funeral director. You can give all your vital statistics that's required for death certificate purposes. You can give some of your bio for your obituary. You can, if you're a traditional burial, you can go ahead and select your casket and all that, and it's recorded and placed on file. So it is pre-planned. You can do that, no cost whatsoever to do that. But if you want to, and we'll discuss later, to secure and have that financial security and relieve your family of having the burden of paying your expenses at death, you can at that time also prepay those items. But you don't have to do that. You can plan your service without doing that. Should you prepay, it does help ensure that the financial responsibility for funeral cost is not placed on family members. In some instances, prices are what they call locked in at today's rate, and then it may help you qualify for Medicaid and Social Security benefits at an early time. We see a lot of that where people are going into the nursing homes and they need to get qualified for Medicaid. Well, they have to spend down their expenses below $2,000 in their checking account. So Medicaid does allow the family to come and prepay a funeral to put those, because $10,000 is excluded. You can put $10,000 towards your burial, and it is excluded from your assets that Medicaid looks at for that. So we see a lot of that with people that are having to go to a nursing home. They come in and prepay to help them get qualified for the Medicaid there. Talking about locking in the price, I necessarily don't like that word locked in. We call it guaranteed. You come in today, say it's $10,000, you pay it, or we'll get into it. We take that money and we invest it in a prepaid life insurance funding, which is over here a life insurance policy that's equal to the value of the funeral. And we invest that money, and we hope that it gains enough interest to offset the cost of inflation to us. It's not that y'all are going to pay any more, but we take that money and we invest it to help offset our cost of inflation. So in one aspect, I guess it does lock in your price that you prepaid at, because when you pass it might be 13,000, but you don't pay that difference. We hope that interest has grown enough to cover that inflation on our end. If it doesn't, we write that off as a loss on that. Another way to do it is a savings or a certificate of deposit that's earmarked for final funeral expenses, which is payable at death to the funeral home. So we can set it up through a bank on that, and I'll talk about the main difference on that later. Different types of contract. You can come in and you can just prepay the services, or you can come in and just prepay the casket vault, or you could just come in and prepay, cremation expenses. It's whatever you would like to prepay. You can come in and pick and choose those items. That's the different types of contracts that you can do. The interest on the account, when it's prepaid and placed in either the insurance or the CD, goes to the funeral home. That's the pre-need law in Georgia, that the funeral home has the right to the interest. The tax on the interest, that's the disadvantage to putting it in a CD in a bank, because it has to go under the individual's social security number. Mm-hmm. So therefore they would get the 1099 at the year end, and they would have to pay the tax. In the insurance product, it's tax-free. The growth on that is tax-free, so there's no tax on that. So that's the main difference. That's why we use the insurance product more. Number one, it's paying more interest than any bank right now for us, and then it's tax-free to the individual that has prepaid on that. The bank, if you put the money in the bank, it is fully refundable. It can't even come and say, I've changed my mind, I want to close this out. As long as you do it within that renewal period, you won't be faced a penalty from a bank. It's just like any regular CD at a bank. On the life insurance, after 10 days, it is not refundable. It's just like any other life insurance policy that you took out. You could cash surrender it for whatever the cash value of it is. I guess there's negatives and pluses to all sides of things. That's the negative side of the insurance product is if you, for some reason, you need to cash it out. But with the insurance, it's transferable. If you move states, move towns, moved hours away and decided that you're going to be handled wherever you're living, it is transferable. You can transfer it to another funeral home and still have that full amount. Now it would be up to that funeral home whether they would say, we'll do it for whatever this policy pays, because their pricing could be totally different, from what you prepaid at the funeral home here on that. Go over all the options, available to you before you prepay. It's just like any other contract. Ask your questions, do your homework and see if it is what would be best for you in your family. We recommend at least one family member coming with you to do this while making your pre-arrangements. It would help in case they had a question or input, and just sort of helps you both talk through it, and then they're aware as well as the conversation. Instead of just being the funeral director and the individual, if you have another person in there, then we all would know and be familiar with going on. Again, make your copies, but don't put it in the safety deposit box. Mm-hmm. You can go to NFDA. We're a member of the National Funeral Directors Association. You can go to their website and look at they have resources available to you there as a consumer, and can help answer questions of the material there, or always feel free to call me. Be glad to help you with any questions. And we'll open the floor up at this time for questions for anyone. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question. When you said the insurance could be transferable, could say my children wanted to do it at a different, could they transfer? Is there would there be a way to?
Right, if you're dead,
access to that. Right,
yes, ma'am. If deaths occurred and you're in a total another area, then they would just tell that funeral home, and then if they don't have a copy of the information, they could call the funeral home that has it. They could just fax it down or email it down, and then that funeral home could reach out to the insurance company and start the claim process.
What are all the options? I don't know, can you get it?
Yeah.
Wow, all the options.
You hit the main.
Right, you have your full traditional funeral where you have the visitation the night before, you have the funeral the next day, then the interment. This is on traditional. Then you have it where, and we're seeing this more common now, where the visitation is prior to the service and then the interment. You can have straight graveside service only, with, no visitation, or you could do a visitation before then the graveside. You have immediate burial. That's where services are minimum. There's no embalming of the body. Burial takes place within 24 to 48 hours, and there's no service. You could have a minister come and say, but there's no type formal service, so you can have immediate burial. So the, many different options there on that. With cremation, you have the direct cremation where death occurs. You're taken into our care. We meet with family to have the cremation authorization signed, and then that completes the services there. Or you can have a memorial service to follow, at a chapel or church. Then you could have a visitation before, then have the service. You can have a full funeral, and then the body's cremated after the funeral. The body's present. You can have just a visitation and then the body. With cremation, your options, you have a lot more options with cremation and how you can do that with cremation. So there's many multitude of options. You might say, well, I don't want have a visitation, but I want a service, so you can do that. I want a visitation, but no service. Different ways on that and the options.
Where is cremation, the process actually done?
Okay, the closest crematory to us is in Harrison County, and that's the one that we use. There's no crematory in Carroll County. Interesting. Yes, ma'am.
This is going to be kind of involved, but Keith, thank you for being here, and you are the best.
Well, thank you.
If hypothetically, but really, 35 years ago, you purchased a plot and you own it with your first husband, and it's in North Carolina. And if you, this is getting to the point quickly, I hope, if you cremated and you have a plot and a tombstone and all that in North Carolina, do they dig it up and bury the ash? I want my children to do what they want to do, and it doesn't make a bit of difference to me. But can you bury ashes in your plot?
Yes, ma'am.
I know that's great.
You can. And again, each cemetery is different on that, but you've got two plots there. So one is for you. So they would allow the urn to be buried in that lot, your lot.
One more question, cost-wise. Is it better to be cremated and the deceased doesn't care? So if it's better to do that, or have the funeral home drive the casket to North Carolina, or is it better? I mean, it makes sense sort of just to be cremated.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, your expense is going to be less, considerably less than, casket and driving transportation up, and depending on how far it is, it may be, cheaper to fly. And the average flight on shipping human remains is about $800, somewhere in there. So you've got that, and so it would be less expensive on the for cremation to be buried in North Carolina, and your children could drive the ashes up
and drop them
me,
along the
right? If you would like, yes.
Yeah, right.
And so with that, but and then if it's perpetual kept cemetery, you're probably going. The grave opening will be less because they're not having to do the full grave on that. So, and they may still require the urn to be in the urn vault. They make smaller vaults for urns specifically, so they may, require.
And if that is prepaid, one more question, then I'll quit. If that is prepaid now, and the deceased may not be here in Carrollton, how does that work? is it still transferable, the cremation?
Right, it would be the
But
money
wherever
that you
that
prepaid
proceeded.
would be able to be transferred. But again, you know, if their pricing was a little higher or something, they may say, we'll take what this policy will pay, and then the family would still have to pay, you know, the difference on that. Most on our end, if a family comes in and they prepaid elsewhere and it's, you know, close, we usually just accept it for what it is and go on and not try to put a family through that stress of coming up with a financial difference on that.
Does that transfer money work internationally?
That I don't know. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I mean, say you're
Yeah.
overseas when you die
Right.
and you prepaid everything here.
Mhm.
I think most people ship the body back
Back,
here, right?
Mhm.
But I just
Probably
wonder-
what would happen on that case would be if you were overseas and you wanted to be buried over there, if death occurred there, family would pay that expense out of pocket, and then the policy here would be processed as a life claim, and then those funds would go directly to, because all of them have a beneficiary listed
Oh, okay.
on there. That funds would be given to the family.
Okay, thank you.
That'd probably be the easiest.
Yeah.
That raises a question. So if you are traveling, you may not, I mean, again, this may be outside normal expertise, but if one of us were to pass away overseas, how does that process start?
Right.
I mean, to get the
Yeah.
body back and,
Back.
you know, it's not like you guaranteed being buried over there because they may not have a place for
Place
you.
for it, right, yes, well, contact us and we, you know, would contact whatever country you're in, their embassy to start helping us, and, you would get a funeral home there to pick up embalm, we'd get them information for what they need for a death certificate and the permit to get you out of the country, and then come back. It's probably at least a week-long process, at least, on that. It has happened, we have done that to get, some local people back before on that. And one, thing that is offered, there is a policy when you prepay that, is for that. If you're over there, the expense they would pay to get you back here, that can be attached like a rider to the, if you're a big traveler, that you could do that. Dr. Burton, I'm nervous now, yeah.
One of the things that I really appreciate about you with Pat's funeral was that you video the service at and I guess my question is, how much would that cost just for the people here if you did that today? How much do you charge to video and give a video of the service to them?
We do that for every service we have in our chapel. There's no additional fee.
It was wonderful to have that.
That's if it's in your chapel.
Yeah, if it's in our chapel, right, yeah, because we have all the equipment. set
Are
up
they
for
live
that.
streamed now?
Yes, ma'am, they
Yeah.
are.
What's the range of just the cremation, like what?
Cremation, for direct cremation, it starts at $29.95 and then goes up from there depending on urns, and then if you do services and so forth. But you could do a full traditional service and then cremate, and this includes the casket, the visitation, everything, for about $7,000, which is about $3 less than what a traditional funeral is these days.
So I know that with our parish, like sometimes they'll do their service here at the church, like does the place of the service affect the cost also? Like if we wanted to have our service here versus in your chapel, or is it still the same?
It's still the same.
Okay.
We have it's the same fee for the use of staff,
Okay.
for coming and working the service, and all the same price.
Yeah, but services here are better.
They are good.
And they're videotaped.
Can you video?
Yeah,
You're hurting me here.
All of our services. I will say though, because we do charge a fee of $100 because for live streaming, because it does mean that we have to get someone in their time to do that and have that expertise to do that. So that's one thing that we do. And some people choose. We also give people the option of that. We don't just automatically live stream a funeral service, because sometimes that can be really, you know, personal to somebody. So we always ask that question too, up front. But yeah,
Okay,
good question. Yeah.
So you can have the service anywhere and it's gonna be the same price, like at a pavilion or anywhere, right?
Right.
Okay.
On our end, yes.
Yes,
ma'am,
well,
yeah.
that's what I mean,
Yeah,
like.
and if you go to pavilion, you know, another facility, they may have rental
They
fees
might
or
have a
something,
fee, but as
but
far
as
as like pre-planning,
right,
paying
for
for
us,
you. it would
right,
be-
it'd be the same. Okay.
My wife and I are both from different parts of the country, so if we get cremated here, then we decide to do it back somewhere else. So you would just do the cremation part, and that would be like a flat fee.
Right, it would, and then we can assist if there's a receiving funeral home or a family member in that area, we can arrange for. The only agency that will allow us to ship remains is the Postal Service. And we have to, it has to be expressed overnight next day. So we try to time it where it's during the week, so, you know, nobody will be closed or what have you on the weekend and so forth. And we cross our fingers the Postal Service don't get lost. Yes, ma'am.
This is just a random thing, you know, this like, can you take remains on a plane with you?
You can. There's certain, TSA has certain criteria. I think they have to be in a wood box that can be X-rayed and so forth. And we give you the certificate of cremation that you have to present to them. So you can, but there are
You
stipulations.
have to check it or is it carry on?
Yeah, carry on.
Okay.
I did it. I did
You
that.
did,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was simple.
I just feel like that would be more comforting than the Postal Service. Like, not that I'm feeling, you know, like, not that I'm feeling, but like, for me as a child too, thinking about that, like, it would be more comforting to take my parents than have them to the once, if I could.
I took him shopping.
Okay.
Before I said goodbye. A boat ride and shopping.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you had a funeral service here at St. Margaret's, could you have multiple ministers?
Yeah, totally.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wondered if that was okay with you.
Yeah, in the form that we did, there's a little space that says if there are any other ministers that you would like that we would invite, we can do that. Of course, only Episcopal ministers can celebrate Eucharist.
Yeah.
Or but like but yeah, you know, you could have somebody else preach from any denomination. You could have, I mean,
Testimonies and stuff.
yeah, we could have other, yeah, we could be really creative about that.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
Keith, I prepaid, I think about 18 years ago. Do I need to check if anything needs to be updated or changed?
You could, that would be very helpful to come in and we could just go over all the information, because I'm sure in 18 years, there may
Things
be
change.
some changes there. And, do that. Yeah, we had one lady, you could just set your clock by every January, she'd call in and we could get a free meet. And by the time she passed, we had about 4 sheets in there where we'd scribbled and marked out and changed all that. But that's good. That's staying on top of it.
It is. These are living documents.
That's right. They are. They really are.
They can be updated. So, yeah.
Any other questions?
We had a parishioner that died overseas, and it was Bogan Giss.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's right.
Will remember.
We've done a
It was
safari.
a heck of a time. I don't know, Keith, if you were around when he passed, but he passed in Africa on safari.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
You can imagine. Difficult.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am.
Is prepayment like one lump sum all at once, or can you do payment plans, or?
That's the other benefit with the insurance. You can do 3, 5, or 10-year pay on that, so it can be broken up. And when you do that, we have a form that we go over with you that breaks down what the cost of the insurance coverage is to you, because with that, what the insurance, just like any other insurance policy, if you say you did a 5-year, but you died in year 3, well, it's gonna pay 100%. So they've got to bump up the premium a little to cover themselves for covering you, you know, providing the insurance coverage on you. But we show you the breakdown on what you're actually paying for the insurance part versus, you know, the funeral as well. And that's a good point. With that, you know, 3, 5, 10 year, anytime after the second year in that, it would pay 100%. The first year, you get back the premiums, and I believe it's 3% interest back that the family would get if it didn't, you know, pay, because you have health questions just like general on those prepaid. In the second year, it pays a little more back. I think it pays like 70% of the policy at that time. But anytime in the start of that third year, it would pay 100% of the cost.
Should we make an appointment with you, Keith, or just?
Yeah. Appointment is bad on that to call and set it up, and be glad to meet and talk options. And
does anybody else at your place do it?
There's another funeral director, Ethan Wiggins. He's the other funeral director
Okay.
there that can meet with families and go over all options and take care of them. Yeah, he's very good too. I'm glad to have him on the team.
So I guess ideally we would, following this whole process, we would have our paperwork with the church and then have a copy of that with the funeral home, and then get the funeral home paperwork copy here with the church. And so everybody's got copies of everything. And
Yeah, it's, I mean, there's not, you can do one or the other. I mean, it doesn't matter which one you do first. I mean, I would say talk to them first, because they're more comprehensive in terms of all the things that they cover. And you know, and then once you get all of those arrangements done, then come see me, and then we'll figure out the details of the service. And then you can make those copies. You can give them a copy of that too, just so that there's another person who has that in the file, you know.
And all of our stuff is in a fireproof cabinet, so it's protected. So
I mean, it is. I mean, one of the barriers to doing this work is that there's a lot of work around all this, and it can be a little bit daunting to go make an appointment with your lawyer and your funeral director and your priest and all that kind of stuff. But again, it's important stuff. But if you can kind of tackle it all at once and get all the things lined up and make sure that your family, your next of kin has access to all of those kind of things, and you know, and make sure all of those entities have copies of what the other entities have as well. I think that's helpful. Just so everybody, I mean, I don't need to have your legal documents, but just so that everyone has access, so that no one has any questions about that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, and one document that's out there is the Advanced Directive of Health Care.
Yeah.
And for those that may have family that's out of town or no family, in that document, it has, I wish my healthcare agent, whoever you've appointed to take care of you when you're sick and not able to answer for yourself, I give that person the right to handle the disposition of my body at death. And then it has a place for you to initial whether you want to be traditional buried or cremated. And that document is a lifesaver for a funeral home once death's occurred, because that outranks, even if you're married and you've got that document and you've got somebody appointed other than your spouse, Georgia law states that person has the right to handle your disposition. So it just saves a lot of work and headaches down the road if you've got that document conflict there, that this is what they wanted, this is who they appointed, and this is the type of service they want. And so I would get that document filled out, because it is very helpful. And you can access it online.
I'm sure y'all already covered this, but just so I know, like when we think about, like, right, like I think about how my mom knew my grandparents' wishes, like, cause they pre-planned, prepaid all this stuff, but then So like if my husband and I were to do this now, I wouldn't necessarily want to burden my 13-year-old with this. So who are the people that you recommend, like, to give these pieces of like this information or these plans to?
If you have siblings that if you have one that you're real close to, then, you could, give it to them so they would be aware, especially since, underage is not, your child's not a legal adult yet. Someone there, God forbid something happened, both of y'all traveling or in an automobile accident, then, you gotta have someone that's gonna step up. So I would give it to one of the siblings.
This is off topic, but does Almon handle pauper funerals?
We do, when the need does occur,
Not your favorite thing.
well, no, it don't know what I was going to say, sort of comical, because some of y'all will know, but the corner of the county, he sort of, is involved in those. So he, which is me, by the way. That's the reason it's comical. I've sort of take the responsibility on as the county, and I handle either the burial myself, or we're going to mainly doing cremation with all of them, just because the space at the cemetery is getting limited on that. So I've got it worked out with the crematory through the county, that I can just go straight through them, so I don't have to go through a funeral home. The law allows me to complete the death certificate from start to finish. So whereas used to, the paupers would always go through a funeral home, here I sort of just bypass that, not put that burden on them. But now, say the death occurred in a nursing home or something, and they called a funeral home's got the body in their possession, and then they contact me, they're indigent, no funding, then I send them the application that the county has that has to be filled out, and if they meet approval, then the county pays $550 for a pauper service. So that's all the funeral home gets, and I just award that funeral home, that $550. Most of them these days I handle, because usually they die in a hospital or something like that, so they're at the hospital, and I can have several days to work it out and just handle it without going through the funeral home.
What's the percentage of those, or the number per year?
It's really gone down up until this year. We've already had 2 since January this year. And part of it I give credit to is the application, because Georgia law states not just the individual has to be indigent, but the legal next of kin that goes down the lineage descent. So if any of these people own property, have assets, have a job, whatever, they're not indigent, so they're denied, and they have to, find the funding to do it. So it's deterred a lot of, the indigent people claiming indigent status. And another thing, usually those that are claiming indigent status, the coroner's usually been involved in it at the scene or home or somewhere. And so I've got a pretty good idea of the status of the financial of the family, and weigh in on it.
Thank
you.
Any other questions for Keith?
Yeah, I have one, Keith.
Yes, sir.
If you're giving your body to Emory, it stipulates it's got to be there within 24 hours, or they won't accept it. Do you do that often?
With Emory, they have their own removal service.
Their new documents indicate they do not.
They do not. Okay.
It's your responsibility.
Really? Okay. All right. I was not aware of that. That's a change then. So with that, what we would do at the time of passing, could call us. We would take you into our care, and then as soon as they're available for us to bring the body up, we would transport it up. That's not a problem. But I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. I wasn't aware of that, but yeah, that's very helpful to know, because used to they would have their service and you would just call their hotline and they would send their removal team out.
Yeah, got too many people giving.
Yeah, I guess on that. Yeah, that's interesting.
That's the whole body, right? And not just organs.
Right.
That's the whole body.
That's the whole body.
But you do get back, you get
Right.
back cremated remains
Remains, that's right.
Oh, do you?
after
Yeah,
about
after
a year and a half.
Yeah.
It's good.
And on a lighter note, what do you do with my artificial meat?
Artificial. Yeah, it is, actually, after the cremation process, the only thing that we have to remove prior to cremation is a pacemaker. So that has to be removed prior to. Afterwards, the cremation process, artificial knees, anything metal, there's a device that's ran over the remains, and those items are removed and put into a recycle container. Then a recycle company comes through and picks those up.
That's a good question. I thought about that. Bronze it or
They probably
something, you
melt
know?
them back. I don't know.
Does that include fillings and teeth and things like that?
Well, some of that, the heat is enough that, you know, you wouldn't see that on that, yeah.
That's good.
I wanna see my hips.
Yeah.
on display.
Um,
Haunting the house.
Your ghost would have a limp, right?
How long do you wait to cremate after someone dies? I mean, just last week, we heard the story about somebody waking up and.
Right, yes, ma'am, I did see that, yeah.
Lord.
Yeah, generally it's, you know, probably 24 hours, you know, some states have a law that you can't cremate for 48 or 72, but Georgia does not. So, I mean, you could die in the next hour and we could be cremating you in 3 hours from now, you know, in Georgia, but that's usually not the case. It's usually at least the following day from there.
You got time to wake up. You're going.
That's right, yes, yeah.
All right, well, I mean, Keith is right next door,
Yeah,
so if
absolutely.
anybody has any other questions, please.
And if anyone, I did bring some little pre-planning guidance on, and ink pens. If anybody wants to, you know, pick these up and take, and you can be reading, and it's got probably some of the stuff y'all already covered over that, but y'all could pick these up and an ink pen if you'd like and take with you. And then, yes, it's got a number on the bottom. Just call and set an appointment. Be glad to meet with you and discuss all the options available to you. Thank you
Let's
again
give
for
Kenny-
having me.
And next week, Ketty Cusick is gonna be with us and talk a little bit about legacy giving and how you might think about your assets and what you might want to do with those as well. So that's just another piece of it.